Rob here from WatchGuard to talk about the internet threat landscape. So, thank you very much.
Thank you. Howdy. So I'm Rob Hartstein. I am the sales engineer for WatchGuard Technologies. You met Michael Fraser a little earlier. He's the national account manager, and we kind of work together. So he's the sales brains, and I do kind of the tech stuff. So today's agenda, out that the web is still the primary threat vector. We'll jump into malware. Malware, of course, is still out of control. It continues to jump in leaps and bounds. We'll talk about botnet evolution, what's happening in there that's continuing to threaten networks. We'll talk about malware networks. They've become a lot more dynamic. You know, in the old days, it used to be easy to shut one down. That kind of has changed over time. Attackers are definitely data focused. It's all about the money these days. You know, in the past, it used to always be about bragging rights. Hey, I was able to hack this site. Although there are still some sites out there, such as Anonymous, that I used to live in San Francisco. So BART, they were able to steal all the BART information as far as commuters that are on the system. So, but for the most part, attackers are data focused. We'll talk a little bit about cloud computing. What we're seeing out there, you know, everyone talks about the cloud, but if you kind of ask them what data they should put in the cloud and what they shouldn't, there's kind of a conundrum there. And we'll talk about third-party apps a little bit, and lastly, we'll talk about fake AV and MAC threats that continue to grow. Okay. So recent headlines, as you heard earlier, you know, Epsilon was basically hacked to obtain the email addresses. So now that instead of myself or end users getting an email that says, hey, dear valued customer, it now says, dear Rob Hartstein, right? It knows what my name is because it now has my name associated with my email address. So it can now target me directly, hopefully hoping that I'm going to click on one of those links, which of course I never do, right? RSA, you heard about a little bit earlier. RSA, of course, was hacked in a two-prong attack. We quickly had Sony. So for all of you, what happened with the Sony PlayStation Network? How many of you play Sony? Really? Oh, come on. Okay. So, you know, with Sony, obviously, the site was shut down for over a month. Loss of money. Loss of cache, right? Including, of course, as our speaker earlier mentioned, that to give away free AV protection and free identity threat protection to their customers. They went to Citibank and then it jumped to IMF. So, but the web is still the primary threat vector that we're seeing at WatchGuard. So some of the statistics we're seeing is for 2010, websites increased, malware sites is up by over, by a factor of 2. We're also seeing that vulnerabilities are affecting those web apps. You know, with these days with social media, Web 2.0 applications, you know, basically it's all now flipped from being all client-based, where we'd have to load a piece of software on our workstation in order to run an app, to all being web-based. We're seeing that from this study that 77% of all websites contain malware. And we're seeing that 57% of all data stealing happens over the web, as we saw with all those attacks, including Epsilon, which actually attacked multiple organizations because Epsilon was a marketing firm that basically kept all that information for their customers. Okay, so a lot of breaches happening. Three most prolific countries, China, Russia, and the US. Right, with all three of those, they account for around 53% of all the web infections that are happening, and then of course it spreads out geographically through the rest of the world. So, but why the web? So a lot of us, we've learned over time we need to work on the operating system and our servers, and basically we've hardened them down. Microsoft has also gotten very good as well as far as protecting the OS. And for all of us, you know, we all know these days for email we shouldn't be using it as far as a method to allow phishing type attacks to get through our workstations, right? So users have become a lot more savvy to email threats, but we still see it happening. There's a lot of those UPS type attacks. It's kind of funny, even at my home, I got a query that said, hey, you know what, why can't I open this UPS shipping document? I walk over to the computer, I go, why are you trying to open that? Well, because I'm expecting a UPS package. So timing was good, right? But so there are still users that are not as savvy to know that they should be clicking on email type threats. And with the whole advent of Web 2.0 and social networking, the web browser has become the universal app, right? So instead of me having to load that piece of software onto my workstation, I now just go to a website, whether it be playing Facebook games, right? I want to play Farmville. I don't need to no longer load that software on my workstation. And on top of it, Web 2.0 presents a really juicy target, right? There's a lot of complexity in the applications that are behind the scenes, and there's a lot of user interaction that's going on, right? Where I'm trusting maybe Facebook, and really I don't know if I should be trusting the developers, the third-party developers that actually host their content on Facebook. So what we're seeing is the common two web attacks still remains the same. SQL injection attacks, as well as cross-site scripting. This is from the web side or the server side of it. And from the client side, we're still seeing drive-by downloads being the most common attacks. So can someone maybe describe for me what a SQL injection attack is? Come on.
An attack in which SQL code is injected into a field on a web page or similar, allowing the code to be executed remotely by the server.
Exactly, right. So there's kind of a cute little cartoon over here. I don't know if you can read it.
XKCD.
Sorry?
XKCD.
So basically, it says, it's obviously a mother getting a call from the school about her son. Right, this is your son's school. We're having some computer trouble, and of course the son immediately assumes that her. So of course the mother immediately assumes her son is responsible. Did he break something? And the school's like, well, in a way, right? Did you really have to name your son Robert? Single quotes, close parentheses, semicolon, drop table students, semicolon. And of course the mother goes, oh yeah, well that's just, we call them little Bobby tables. That's what we call them. Well, we lost all our years of student data because of that. Okay? And then of course the mother has to give the final ring back to them to tell them that, well, you should have sanitized the data, your database, right? And your inputs. So SQL injection, so how about cross-site scripting? Oh, come on. Anyone else? Cross-site scripting? Without looking on the screen.
I think I know, but I'm not going to open my mouth because I'm not sure.
No, go ahead.
Basically, it's the idea that, if you have access to something like, say, Facebook, and then, someone hits the Facebook page, they're viewing your Facebook profile, and then on that profile you include information, a hook that basically leads to code from another website, injects it through frame rates or frames and stuff like that, then you can run that code. And it may not be code that Facebook allows you to run, but basically you manage to hook them into running it.
Exactly, right. So it's this trust. How many degrees of separation between the web page that I'm going to and the source behind the web page?
Of course, if people weren't so often logged in all the time to everything, it would help.
Absolutely, right. So out of that, although I may trust my neighbor or my friend, doesn't necessarily mean I trust their friends, right? So you have this trust going on, and cross-site scripting can take advantage of that trust to allow malicious code to be run. Okay. And then drive-by downloads, where basically I go to a website and basically malware or software gets downloaded without my interaction on it, right? So basically a combined web attack would look something along this, right? I'm a hacker. I'm going to do a SQL injection attack. Going to infect the database so that when I'm an innocent user and I come along, basically I become infected by doing a drive-by download. Okay, so that's combined web attacks. So
That kind of attack has been known to affect Linux repositories once or twice, where people have done that type of stuff and people have to get it.
Yep, yep. So a lot of legitimate sites serve malware. PlayStation, BBC. I pulled some of these just recently. BBC as well as Amazon.
Yeah,
Right. So those sites that we tend to trust, whether it be for entertainment or our buying patterns, those sites are infected as well.
Or even things that are inherently trusted because of their association, such as ad websites or ad distributors.
You got it right. So it's very easy for the cache of a certain organization to be maligned based on the fact that they're allowing other sources to feed into their web page, which of course is infecting users. So we're all using social networks. Greg came up to me and said, "Hey, what's WatchGuard's tweet just a couple minutes ago as far as what our Twitter page is, right? And what's our name?" So social issues combined with technical issues as far as some of this new software and new applications that's coming out, and then combined with huge popularity is just creating this big malware cesspool out there. Okay. Because we all use social networks. I mean, even us as a company, we're WatchGuard. We use Facebook, right? We're going to post on Facebook, right? So we use it as marketing tools as well.
Twitter?
I'm sorry, was there a question?
No. You use Twitter?
We use Twitter as well. Yeah. So to mitigate the risk, you should be looking for products that have certain capabilities in them. What's really big, or what we're finding right now, is application control is a big one for ourselves, right? It's all about these Web 2.0 applications, being able to control where users can get to. Okay? Web security, of course, is going to be big as well. So there isn't a single website that you can trust, because once again, it's that implicit trust. If I trust that website, I'm not sure the content that's feeding into it, that I can trust that content, right, or that source. A lot of organizations and a lot of firewall vendors are coming out with Layer 7 control and inspection. Layer 7 used to be an issue for a lot of hardware vendors because of the amount of processor that it required. But these days, with processors being so fast in appliances, Layer 7 should be a requirement that you should all be looking at, right? So packet filters, those type of appliances can no longer meet the needs that your customers as well as those users are requiring with their applications. Okay, and also there are now cloud services available that can do reputation lookup of those sites, right? So you can get this community type effect where if let's say a breach happens in Hong Kong, by the time it hits the U.S., if it follows follow the sun type model, it's already been taken care of, right? So malware continues to be out of control. Our good friends at Kaspersky, this is basically what they've been seeing. So, in a period of about 15 years, they uncovered about 2 million unique malware samples, which then increased in 1 year to 15 million, and then went up to 17 million the year after. So, although the exponential growth that we saw between 2007 and 2008 seems to be broken, what's now happening is instead of it being all about the quantity of malware, it's about the quality of the malware. So the quality of the malware has gotten extremely better. So new threats per day. What they're seeing is 30,000 new threats per day. They're coming out with about 3,500 signatures per day. That's a lot of signatures, right? I mean, a lot of these vendors have automated tools, but they still need to test those signatures. So what happens as well when, this is my PC, my database of signatures for my malware or spyware keeps on growing and growing. What happens to the performance of my PC? It goes down, right? So what happens is vendors have to come up with ways of purging older malware out, or malware signatures out, so that the new signatures can take its place,
Or
right?
consolidating signatures, for that matter.
Sorry?
Or consolidating signatures.
Or consolidating signatures, either using regular expressions or coming up with different techniques. So what's happening is we're starting to move away from signatures as a sole model and moving into heuristics or behavioral analysis. So where basically if I see a piece of code, I'm going to sandbox it, Appliance is going to sandbox it. They're going to try to run the code, see what it's doing, if it's updating the registry, if it's attacking the operating system, it might be prevented from being allowed through. So additionally as well, depending on the vendor, I've removed the vendor names to protect the innocent. Depending on the vendor, response times can go anywhere between 2 hours up to 8 hours, as far as when that vendor can come out with their signature update, right, or a patch to affect it, right. So depending on which vendor you go with, you might find that your results may vary, right? And this is only from when the vendor offers up the update, right? You still have the issue of the IT person has to install it on their servers, they have to test it, and then they have to push it out to all the machines, right? So the window of vulnerability could be days as well as weeks, okay?
I tend to prefer AVAS, but I know there's a lot of antivirus options. You have Averia, and Kaspersky are known really good ones as well as I've heard some decent things about that E something or another. But I was wondering, do you as a professional have a preference as to an antivirus software to push?
We do, and actually if you come to me later, I could give you this presentation with actually the vendors in there. So I'm trying to keep it vendor agnostic.
Oh.
So personally, on our XCS appliances, we use Kaspersky.
Kaspersky's has always been a good one from what I've been able to see.
Right. The only problem that you run in with Kaspersky is if you're in the government space. Right. Then you have the government that doesn't want a Russian vendor. Right.
Yeah.
And then of course you're going to have to move to one of the US based vendors.
It does bring up a question also with how long it takes to push them out, of why not catch it before it even gets to the user computers, catch it on the router side or on the gateway.
Exactly, right. And that's where the behavioral techniques kind of add into that, right? So instead of it being
Or for that matter, you can have an
signature-based.
IDS that can detect anything that might be going wrong on each computer.
Absolutely, right. So there's more than just the AV or malware software in itself. There's all these other layers of defense that you need
Yeah,
to
the
worry
larger
about.
you are, the more layers you really need to some degree.
Exactly, right. And the larger you are, the more likely you can have more point solutions in your mix of appliances, right? So it's all about layered defense and depth. So Michael and I travel all the time, and kind of the example I give is when we come back from Montreal, which we go to visit, we have to go through at least 6 layers of them checking our airline ticket before we can make it through, right? So if
And you can
one
go through
layer,
all of them with a fake one.
and if you make it through all of them, then we're in trouble, right? But so even if one of the people there, or one of the employees, had a bad night, they went out drinking, they're not as with it in the morning, hopefully some of those other layers will catch it. Also, when you're looking for a vendor, you're going to also want to see is how many updates they come out with per day. Once again, you see the results can vary. More updates that come out per day, and the smaller the updates can be, right, because it has to be downloaded to either the appliances or to your solution product, the quicker that you're going to protect your networks. So a lot of hackers and a lot of AV makers now also have to take care of things such as packing and encrypting, right? Where basically it compresses the file so it looks smaller. It also looks different. So basically those signatures now break, where I have to do sort of partial signatures on files in order to figure out if it's a virus or not. As well as encrypting the binary to make it look different. So as it continues to spread, it continues to morph and change as it goes down the list, right? So you're always going to look for a vendor that supports the most type of compression formats out there. Of archiving compression formats, as you can see, it varies. But as you can see on the right-hand side of here, between packers and polymorphism, that accounts for about a little over 60% of the malware and spyware that actually is released. So that's, if you can handle the archiving and compression piece, that of course is going to protect you the most. So any organization is going to need as much protection as they can afford, right? It's usually about dollars, right? How much can I afford? How much do I have a budget to spend, right? You know, Michael and I, we travel and when we meet up with end users, it's always how much is that going to cost me? And then they have to analyze what the risk is versus what the cost is. And then, of course, they need the approval from their C-level or above or purchasers in order to buy it, okay? So for us, we are a gateway appliance. So for us, we kind of promote gateway appliances, gateway protection, right? So sitting along the perimeter and monitoring it. But of course, as well, you need endpoint security, right? I'm traveling right now. I'm outside the perimeter, and so I need to protect my workstation when I'm not being protected by our firewall. So to mitigate the risk, choose a vendor that comes up with their updates the most often. As I mentioned earlier, signatures by itself are no longer enough. You need behavioral analysis going on as well. Having a vendor that comes out with their malware detection in real time, it's not an update that gets pushed out once a day, right? Is going to help you as far as protecting you the sooner. Right, you want to, back to the whole signature thing, choosing a vendor who has the best heuristics is going to help you as well. And then, of course, choosing a vendor that can crack the most type of archives and file types. So botnets continue to evolve. So can someone tell me what a botnet is?
It's a malicious grouping of computers all networked via not a physical network, but just code that a bot herder can push out and get to do whatever he wants, whether it's send spam or DDoS or any other malicious activity.
Absolutely, right. So it's kind of like the board, right? It's a network of compromised computers, right, under the control of remote hackers. You have the bot herder that has their bot herder dogs that are collecting all these workstations to add to their command and control center. And basically they can then start attacks. But what's also interesting is botnets tend to have a lot of different, if you look at it as kind of a Swiss Army knife, has a lot of blades, right? It does a lot of different things, right? So it's not all about either spyware or malware. It can also do things such as phishing attacks, key logging, where I can log all the passwords as someone's typing it in on their workstation, right? So there's a lot of different attacks that are happening out there. As we saw last year from Zeus, a lot of these are coming as pre-packaged crimeware kits. So I just buy the package and I can use the code that comes with it. I no longer have to be tech savvy at it. A lot of them, such as Zeus, is geared towards online banking, right? Most money that I can make. Stealing credentials, especially. And so what we also saw is Kraken returns, right? So this was one of the biggest zombie networks out there. We initially thought that it had been dismantled sometime last year, but then new variants, that whole polymorphism popped up and it started affecting computers. And so far it's affected about 318,000 computers. So with that, I'm not going to go through these slides, but most of the popular Trojans out there and downloads by payload are going to be either the Trojans or downloaders. Okay, but the real kicker is the power of the performance computing power of a botnet. As you can see here, this is an average gaming computer, kind of a state-of-the-art computer, and this is one of the most powerful public servers that we have out there. By using Keto, which was Conflicker, right? You can see the performance power that botnet had.
Should be solving the physics problem with botnets.
It does, of course, bring up the issue also with identity theft and even encryption. With a botnet like that.
Exactly, right? Because now you can try to mask track passwords and encryption, right? Having that much performance power out there, right? So some of the biggest.
12 million.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
How many gigaflops was it? Was it 1.2
Yeah,
or
it was 12, maybe 1, 2, 3. 320 million gigaflops.
I apologize, I was off.
By only a few orders of magnitude.
And now, if only it could go to SETI at home.
There you go. We can analyze all the signals that we're getting from outer space.
No
Right?
problem.
So the client fee Trojan was to steal online banking information. Oops. Hit a whole bunch of organizations, some small, some large as well, right? And so, but it's not just about banking sites, it's anywhere that hackers believe that they can make money off of it, right? So, whether it be stock brokerages, advertising networks, online casinos. So botnets continue to evolve. They evolve very quickly. Right, so, and they continue to be a major security issue for ourselves, okay? So, back to the defense in depth, using a product with layered security, of course, is going to be the best thing to do. Gateway by itself, of course, is not going to be effective. You also need endpoint type security as well. And of course, if you have a solution that also offers some sort of cloud service that can actually look up in a community type effect the reputation of those sources of the attack and decide whether to allow or disallow it. So, so malware has become really dynamic. In the old days, it used to be a lot easier to solve it. So it started out as bot networks, it moved to fast flux DNS, and then it moved to domain flux. And I'll kind of talk about it. So that should be animated. I'm not sure why it isn't. So in the old days, it was pretty easy, right? If I had a botnet and I had a single DNS server, if the authorities could bring down that DNS server, the botnet couldn't get served up, right? If I try to click on a link in it, right? So that's how single flux DNS worked. So what happened is they got smarter and they used double flux DNS. So now they have multiple DNS servers. It's all round robining. So now if the authorities take one server off, there's still all these other ones that are serving up what workstations that it should get to.
Or for that matter, the workstations themselves are assisting in that.
Exactly, right? So now the authorities have to bring down all the DNS servers as well as disinfect all these workstations on the other end. Right, so it's now kind of hard, especially if all of these are located in different regions of the world, right? So that's a fast flux DNS. So if you can choose a product that is real-time, can look up both IP as well as Euro reputation service, that can help you protect your network against those type of attacks. So what used to be bragging rights, it's now mostly being driven by the dollars for malware. So these are the goods that are available. I talked about earlier about that toolkits are available that you can purchase. So here's kind of if I wanted to buy credit card information, range of price was between 6 cents to $30, depending on the quality of the data. So you can see that there's a lot of services and goods available that have sensitive data in them, right? These were the complaints received for a number of years, and this of course represents just a fraction of it, right? Because a lot of the crimes are never reported, right? But you can see the millions or half a trillion dollars worth of dollar loss just in the ones that were reported in the last year, 2009. So protect the data. DLP is really big, really hot in the organization. Data loss prevention, okay, or protection, right? To protect that sensitive data. So what is the cloud? So everyone says, I need the cloud, right? I mean, every customer we speak to, and when I ask, so what is the cloud? Well, why do you need the cloud? That's where it gets a little more hazy or fuzzy.
It's because the ads on TV.
Yeah.
So what is cloud computing?
Virtual.
Working at a data center that's not yours.
Right, so Jennifer and I were talking about the cloud earlier today at lunch. And so you can have cloud. I can either have a hosted cloud solution, right, where I go out to an organization such as Amazon, lease their their servers and I store my applications on it. Or I can also, we already have, probably all have cloud services as well, right? We have web servers, right, which we locally host and own, right, that also serve up cloud information. So, what we're seeing is a lot of organizations are trying to move to the cloud, but they're not exactly sure where to delineate what should be stored in the cloud and what shouldn't be stored in the cloud. As we saw earlier, Epsilon, which basically had 20 plus customers, Chase, JP Morgan, Marriott, so actually my Marriott account was basically trying to attack, right? All these organizations had a cloud service, or used this cloud service at Epsilon, and so it was easy. It was one target for the hackers to attack and get a wealth of data on multiple organizations. So cloud computing is important, but it's a matter of what you're going to allow to reside outside of your organization, okay? What data do you want? You know, PII type data, PHI type data, PCI type data? Probably going to need to be a little more concerned about than about security type information, which I'll talk about a little bit. A lot of the technologies introduce new risks, a lot of virtualization going on there. We need to sort of segment the different vendors' data from one another, or the different users' data from one another. And it presents itself as one big target for attack, right? If I'm a robber, am I going to break into a shack, or am I going to break into a mansion? Which is going to give me the most assets?
The major issue is, I'm not extremely familiar with breaking out virtualization jails, but if you have these major server farms running virtual machines, VPSs to each client, one of the clients is running an insecure web app. Well, if their web app is owned and then the person's able to pivot out of that virtual machine, they can then own the clientele. So it's not only, it brings it out of the scope of your personal security, of your technology,
Exactly.
But who else is on that network?
Absolutely, right. So you basically have to worry about how those servers are protected, how the data is segmented from one
So
another.
speaking cloud computing, you don't know who you're standing next to.
Exactly, right. Is it a good person, or is it someone that's going to stab you in the back, right?
What are you going to do when Microsoft goes cloud in 2012?
Oh, Microsoft is going cloud, right? I mean, we have Office 365 now that is out there, right? We have the whole Microsoft Exchange forefront type.
All of Live,
Right? We have Google Apps, right?
but Windows 8 is going to be cloud-based.
Yep.
That's why I went to using Linux back in Red Hat 9 days, because Bill Gates was talking about that back then, was he wanted to go to active servers and stuff, and where you rent your operating system monthly and the operating system applications monthly instead of owning it.
Right, that's a lot of residual revenue, right, for these organizations, right? For Microsoft, Google, right? Constant residual revenue.
Doesn't matter what OS you're running on the desktop.
Exactly, right. The data is stored somewhere else, and whether you protect, that degrees of separation, how many degrees out are you going to allow your data to sit? Okay, right, especially with contractors working at these organizations. Employees themselves, right, if you go to any hosting solution, they're going to say, we protect your data, no one can see it, but you have no visibility into it to know what actually is going on. And it often breaks the perimeter defense model, right? It's easy to protect the perimeter, but now you have these servers that are sitting outside your perimeter. How do you protect it? You're now relying on the hosted service with their perimeter defense, hopefully protect you. So what we're recommending is that instead of storing data in the cloud, you store network security type information in the cloud. Okay? So that minimizes your risk. So what that involves is you don't typically have any sharing of your sensitive data, PHI, PCI, PII type data sitting in the cloud. It gives you a threat landscape, so you can have your appliances feed back into this cloud type solution and provide a current landscape or real time of what's going on out there in the cloud. So instead of having a list of your personal data in there, you have a list of websites you shouldn't go to, IP addresses of spammers that you know out there, right? So that stuff in the cloud, hackers aren't going to break into. It doesn't provide them any value, right? There's no money on places, and it's kind of like a book. Places I shouldn't go to visit for vacation. Probably not going to be a big seller, right? Reduces the local resource usage if you can use cloud-type services. AV malware tends to be a heavy hit processor on appliances. So if you can push it out to the cloud and use the cloud, it can alleviate some of those performance bottlenecks that you might have. And it can improve bandwidth as well. So reputation services are currently available. Just be intelligent about what cloud-based applications you allow and what kind of data you're going to put there, as well as implementing web and email DLP. So what do you think third-party apps are being targeted these days?
Java.
Sorry?
Java.
Java. Yes, Java would be one of them, but why do you think it's easier to attack a third-party app these days?
Because everybody's computer runs it.
Exactly, right. So these days, I get a laptop from corporate. It's going to probably have a lot of these applications already installed on it. Okay. Microsoft's got really good with improving their overall security, hardening their OS. So a lot of these third-party apps we use them all the time, right? If I didn't have Adobe Reader on my workstation, I probably couldn't look at all of our white papers that we send out, or our customers as well, right? And a lot of vendors haven't established good update solutions, although the ones listed here definitely have definitely improved, right? I mean, I think once a week I get a flash update these days, right? Maybe about once a month I'll get an Adobe update. So they've become a lot more consistent in their updates and making sure that they're pushing them out a lot more often. So as you can see, the attacks are mostly focused on the applications being in blue. So this is from 2004 to 2009. Browser vulnerabilities as well as operating system vulnerabilities, for the most part, have been protected. They're going after the applications. So we're finding out Adobe Reader is the most exploited app in some of these attacks. We're finding out that 3.5 times more vulnerabilities are happening in these third-party apps than they're happening in a Microsoft app. Almost all PCs, as I mentioned, like my workstation, of course, is going to always have third-party apps in it. And we're also seeing an increase in attacks that are trying to exploit vulnerabilities in PDF readers. Okay. So a lot of malicious PDF-type email out there. So what we recommend is to mitigate the risk is make sure you have a product that can do layer 7 inspection, not layer 3, layer 4, and can detect content types in it that are associated with third-party apps. You can decide whether you can allow or disallow that traffic. Right? You can choose a product that detects malware targeted at those third-party apps, PDF threats being one of them. Choose a product that has signatures for vulnerabilities for third-party apps, so that's big as well. And then, of course, if you can use reputation services to block URLs containing party app malware, that, of course, is important as well. So fake AV, of course, we've all seen these. I'm going to kind of go through this to kind of complete it, but scareware or rogueware, right? I get a pop-up on my screen, your computer's been infected, click here to buy this program, and we'll install it and we'll solve the problem. Usually there is no problem, right? It's just basically an ad that is trying to get you to, number one, install the software, number two, purchase the software, right? So they get money both ways. They get money for the cost of the software that you purchased. What they also do is they also create backdoors for themselves to get into so that they can infect your workstations and computers, right? So that they can make money off of it. Some of the ones we've seen are Antivirus Pro 2000 XX. So it's all about scaring the user and hopefully getting them to install the software. So choose a product that basically can detect it, as well as the percentage of either malware or scareware. So why are Mac threats continuing to grow?
Because they haven't really concentrated on security as they've grown in the industry, and even though they are built on a basically secure system, their understanding of it really hasn't evolved as it should on the system itself.
You got it, right.
And it's the most expensive laptop in the store.
In addition, the amount of XP laptops, for an example, or 7 laptops that are protected by antivirus, are about equal to the amount of or the amount that aren't protected are about equal to the amount of Mac machines out there. So, hey, we may as well go for the second leading one that has just as many machines to infect.
Yeah, at the cost of a MacBook, the Target should have more money in the bank.
Yeah.
Because they bought that type of
You know, I was
laptop.
actually-
So it should be a better
How many
target.
times?
Yeah, so if you hit one Mac user and get in, shouldn't that be equal to like 3 or 4 of your
Say Windows XP,
Windows
ME
boxes
users.
for the amount of money you could get from them?
One would think, but sometimes someone will scrimp and save to get their Macintosh or their MacBook instead of
Well,
getting...
at least they've got
getting a
savings. That's
laptop.
something
Yeah,
to
they've
like.
got savings. There will be
now.
money there
They even
again.
bought the MacBook, you had to catch them before the new release.
Oh yeah, that's right. Charge for the band and charge you again.
So what we're seeing is Apple is #1 in vulnerabilities. That represented by the orange color up here. Sorry, the colors aren't as clear as they should be. As you mentioned, #1 market share is increasing, right? Some of the researchers are tired of Apple's arrogance that their operating system can't be attacked, and it's not bulletproof. It's full of holes.
No, and it's full of holes because they've never really guarded against the holes that they've done because they've built the operating system.
Right, but as over time, as more and more vulnerabilities are exposed, they'll continue to improve.
And they always say it's the first virus. Again.
You got it, right. And there are also a lot more OS X free type applications, right? Freeware that's installing malware on the workstation as well. So when you choose a product, if you can choose a product that can catch the PC ones, right, as well as the OS X ones, malware, of course that product is going to give you much more coverage, right? And so, of course, with that comes being basically operating system agnostic, and one that has IPS signatures that can catch Apple vulnerabilities as well. Okay. So is that, are there any questions? Sure.
I'm a little confused. Are you saying that the cloud is the answer or a problem?
The cloud can be the answer, but it becomes what kind of data you're going to put into the cloud. What we believe is you should throw network security type data in the cloud. Like, we offer a cloud service that basically will block IP. Will basically has a list of all IP addresses of known spammers. It also has a real-time analysis of URLs and whether those pages are infected or not. So that type of data, hackers have no use for. Doesn't offer them any money, right? It's bad places to go, right? So we recommend that you put network security in the cloud. You might not want to be as fast as putting content in the cloud.
It's one of those type things that the cloud is, so it's more or less what you do with it versus,
Right.
fighting the fact that it is.
Okay, want to thank you all. And I'll turn it back over to
Actually, we want to ask, got 2 shirts to give away. If you want to ask a few questions.
Sure. So, so why don't we just go through? Let's actually. So let's see if how much people remember. So let's talk about here. We talked about the web being the primary threat vector. What recommendations did I make to protect against that?
Antivirus, firewalling, AV.
Gateway.
More or less being careful about, trusting, you can't
And
trust any
ratings.
website. You can't trust any specific website or all
So I guess he got it, or he already has one, right? All
I already have one.
right. So I guess we never do. These are
I'm wearing mine.
He's wearing his.
So,
I'm not being fair here.
so third-party apps. How can you protect against third-party apps and the vulnerabilities?
Update them frequently, keep a strong AV that does heuristics and, again, gateway and
Remove
watching your traffic.
users. Users.
Shoot the users.
And lastly, what do we recommend as far as cloud computing, what you should store in the cloud versus what you shouldn't store in the cloud? Okay, so that,
Security information.
exactly, right. Store security information in the cloud. Think about what data you want to allow in the cloud, right?
Is that you? All right, well, I think you're up for coming in and talking. That was a great talk.